we all know the world's going digital. I mean, anyone with half a brain can see that, and we've spoken about this a lot of times. So if you haven't worked out by now that the world's going digital, then yeah, you'll probably want to reconsider your education and all that. But yeah, digital IDs are becoming the big talk. The most recent and most noticeable one in my mind that a lot of people were panicking about was the director's ID. I have no doubt this will obviously continue, and I'm sure you feel the same way. A lot of us do at GWC. So we're seeing that governments are continuing to push for digital IDs, and they're directing people to use the new MyGov app. I've seen that a lot of people are getting on MyGov and all that, especially after the wake of hacks like the Optus breach. They've been really pushing people to that. So what are you actually seeing happening around this space with digital IDs, and what can you see happening in the near future with if they keep pushing?
Yeah. So first of all, I'm just going to say, I told you so. I told you so. I told you so. I think I raised this 6 months ago when I said, watch out with these hacks and data breaches, that the governments will start to go, we need a centralized digital ID, that we're the only one that holds your ID, and then everyone can check their ID against us. So I told you so. The thing that's amazed me, and I shouldn't be amazed because the Liberal Party do this all the time. So the Liberal Party are normally the first ones that will actually action something like this, right? And we had Paul Fletcher, I think he's named the Shadow Digital Infrastructure Minister or whatever he is, out there the other day saying that the government should push the MyGov ID app to be the one app around Australia that everyone uses when they go to a bank to open a bank account or get their mobile phone or whatever. So, and I just stood there, I caught it and went, well, here we go. And it always seems to come and start from the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party are always the ones that seem to want to take your freedom away first, when if you actually have a look at their charter, it says that they should be the first ones, to protect it. And you watch, Labor will pick up on this and drive this home and create this big monster. The director's ID, I've got a different view on that from a lot of people. And my view on the director's ID was simply kingdom builders in the bureaucracy, especially at ASIC. They couldn't get the data from the ATO because everyone's got a TFN, right? Tax file number. Just about everyone's got a Medicare number. And if you've got a company, you've got an ABN and that as well. They're all controlled by the ATO. Now, ASIC would give some information across, but not everything. And then ASIC said, well, fuck it, we're going to create our own data system. This is what happens with bureaucracies, right? Is they all start to fragment and they all start to build their own little kingdoms and fiefdoms. And then all of a sudden your data or whatever it is everywhere and it's scattered. Now, through that, right, what will happen is the government will come along on its white horse, just like Paul Fletcher was saying, that we'll centralise it all for you, and all these agencies now will have to come to this one central pool. That's fraught with danger. One, the government's going to know everything that you're going to do. Two, the next step then is what they've done in China is the credit score. The next step after that is, of course, these government central digital currencies that they're rolling out. And I have noticed recently that some of the banks that aren't aligned with the central banks, so the Goldman Sachs of the world, they're joining with the government to produce the digital IDs, or the digital currencies, where the banks that are aligned with the Fed, who now controls, or the central banks, that now control the finance and the economy and the world, and therefore government, they're all going, no, you don't need those, right? You know, we can do our own and all that sort of stuff. So you are slowly seeing a divide in the banks. So you know, as I said, I think the other day, or the other session, is let the banks have that war, because they've got a shitload of money and they've got a shitload more to lose than we have, right? So, and I'd rather them have it than us. That's one thing. But this whole thing, and I believe that some of these hacks could actually be government interference. I would not put it past some sneaky 3-letter, 4-letter agencies out there who are doing the hacks on purpose, so that they could drive this agenda to centralize everything. We do know that the CIA in the US, actually, the problem is now that you know the name of the CIA, they're not the ones doing it. It's one of the 15 other agencies that you have no idea that exist, have meddled in US politics and have spied on US people. We do know that the Australian government spied on Australian people. So it's just one of these things that they will create the scenario that best reflects what they want the outcome to be. And we're seeing that live now with the Ukraine event, the drive of NATO by Western countries to create war in Europe, which is what we're going to have. War in Europe is going to be, I think, a foregone conclusion. Late 2023, mid to late 2023, I think we'll see other countries in Europe get dragged into it. And then if it does, it could spread right continent-wide. So,
yeah, well, everything you mentioned is no surprise, and I'm sure everyone feels the same way, that there's just government interference and a lot of privacy is being invaded, like especially the more they bring in digital IDs across different areas, like we saw with business and all that, and making it more centralized. They're going to keep doing it, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to get nervous around it. They're going to fear their loss of privacy and stuff like that. And one thing I want to mention that you touched...
I'll just say to that, if you're only fearing loss of privacy now, you've lost, right? I feared loss of privacy 30 years ago when I was in the Navy, and I realised how much data was out there on people, right? They've been gathering data, especially financial institutions, and financial institutions will be made give that up to government. The credit card was the biggest data collection device that has ever come onto this planet. Second to that is now the internet or social media accounts. And the only reason that I believe that social media accounts haven't overtaken the credit card industry yet is because the credit card industry has been around for 50 years. Social media has been around for 10. Give social media another 5 years, or the internet economy for another 5 years, it will dwarf all the information that the credit card companies have on you. The other thing is with the credit card companies is a lot of it is still sitting in paper files. They may not have digitized it all yet. But when they do digitize it all yet, and they all are working on massive digitization of all this data, they will have massive amounts. So if you're only waking up now to the loss of privacy and that, you've already lost the war. You know, you're actually not even in the war. right? You're a casualty before the war even started. So that's privacy is something that as soon as you're born, you need to get on top of.
Well, yeah, not much you can really say to that. That's really sobering. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like when it comes to social media, then they can definitely track. Like we all know that even TVs and smartphones are always listening. Like you can see it when you talk about a certain topic, and then you see an ad on it. Like in the next 2 days, you can see stuff like that happen. And I've seen a lot of similar stuff to that. But one point in particular that I wanted to touch on, just because I want to get your thoughts on something, is when you
Can I just
mentioned,
jump?
yeah, sure.
One of the things I love doing is when I'm in a hotel room and someone leaves their Netflix account open on the TV, they haven't closed it, is I go in and have a quick look at, and I do this just for shits and giggles, especially if I'm on a really long, boring conference call. I'll go in and look at what they've watched, and say they've watched, all horror movies. I'll go in and then start watching chick flicks, right? Watch it, put it on, let it run for 5 minutes, then go to the next one, let it run for 5 minutes. Because what that does is it stuffs up the algo. So the next time they log in, all of a sudden I'll start seeing all these chick flicks. So check that out next time you stay in a hotel that has the option for Netflix.
Yeah. That's a good idea. May as well like have some fun with it. Have some fun with the algorithm. So
yeah. So what I do when I'm around, I either I carry my own Apple TV, right? I'll never ever use the in hotel room devices, my Apple TV, or I use my iPad, and then I cast to the TV. Now both of those are run through VPNs for a start, and two, I use password lockers. Things like LastPass and that sort of stuff to control my passwords. And that's one way that if you're traveling, people then can't get hold of your Netflix accounts and stuff. So
yeah, that's some good
cool.
tips. So yeah, the point I was going to mention to you is when you were talking earlier about a few step process where one of the latest steps they're going to look at is bringing in social credits, especially the more they look at digital tracking and invading privacy and whatnot. But when they start looking towards social credits and all that, and like assuming this keeps continuing, which I'm sure it will, but do you actually see the blockchain technology involving decentralized storage of information as a potential solution, or not really?
Not really. DLT is, by its very nature, is open, right? Because it's designed so that you can verify any transaction at any time throughout the history of that blockchain. So it's not a privacy mechanism, right? It's an author. If anything, it's the technology that they will use to drive forward all this data technology. That's why I've been so wary of crypto from the beginning. Is the more I looked into the technology, the more I understood about it, the more threatening the technology got from a government perspective, how they can use it to basically check everything. There's no such thing as anomaly on the blockchain. It might be just a whole heap of strings of numbers, but somewhere that string of numbers is recorded towards you at some point in time. Always is, always has to be. It's just how it works. You have to open an account somewhere, and then as soon as that gets linked to one of your transactions, then they can track every transaction that you've ever done. So the blockchain is what they will use, and the more we don't know where it come from, the more the tinfoil hat person in me comes out and says that this was the plant to get everyone to go this way so that they could use the technology and you'll be comfortable with it. what we're also seeing with the crypto world is the implosions of it. And as I said last week, I think these implosions are very good for the crypto world. It's like what happened with the e-commerce world, is that it'll clean out and create communities that'll self-govern better. You know, so that'll be a good thing out of this. The use of DLT technologies, if they're used in the right way, are very, very good, because you can't cheat them, right? Smart contracts is fantastic, right? The ability to, and this is one of the projects I'm following at the moment, and it's done by a couple of very prominent people, is I buy an NFT, right, to their mastermind and mentor program, right? Say I pay 50 grand and buy an NFT. That NFT then gives me all their knowledge, their access to their networks and all that sort of stuff. At some point, though, when I have built my network on top of their network, right? So I now no longer need the entry via the NFT to the network, because I've built on top of that the friendships and the relationships with everyone, and we're above that entry level thing. I can then sell that to someone else for, say, $60,000, because this network is now bigger, because it's got a lot more people into it and it's got layers, right? I can now sell that NFT to someone else who wants access to this network. The original network founders who sold the original NFTs, say, take 10% of that. So every time one of these NFTs is sold, it just continually pays into them, right? It's like stamp duty, I suppose, when you buy and sell property for a government. It's the same thing with artwork, right? Say if I'm the original artist of, I don't know, this coffee cup, right? And that coffee cup is an NFT. It has a smart contract built into it. If I want to sell that coffee cup to someone else, every time it's sold, a fraction of the sale price will go to the original inventor. So now what we're doing is we're democratizing transactions. We now no longer need pinch points to do transactions, right? And property is probably the one that that will benefit from this. So will companies. You'll no longer need stock exchanges and all that sort of stuff, and because you can create an open network of smart contracts, but it has to be done via the smart contract. It can't be done via a simple currency token, because the problem with the currency tokens is there's no trust in those tokens. Where with the NFTs, you have a physical good, right, or a physical bit of art or a physical bit of something that creates the trust in the digital version of that.